What's up, YouTube people? It's your boy Patty McNinja, and we had another huge video game release. Well, at least it was a game that I was really excited for. The game I'm referring to is Clair Obscur Expedition 33. That whole title is gonna get really annoying to say every time, so we'll see how I do as the video goes on. But of course, since I'm making this video, I've played the game and I want to talk about it. So without further ado, let's rock. We learned a lot about Clair Obscur Expedition 33, which honestly I feel like I need to pick one. He's either Clair Obscur or Expedition 33. I might just switch back and forth throughout this video, but that whole title is quite a mouthful. So we did learn about this game and the studio, because this is a brand new studio, Sandfall Interactive, which is a French studio, which I normally don't bring that up, but I did want to mention it here because this game is inherently very French. French culture does play a role in this game. The first shot of the game is literally has a partially destroyed Eiffel Tower in it. We did learn about this game and the studio in the most recent Xbox Developer Direct. So therefore this game was day one on Game Pass on Xbox Series S and X, which is of course how I played it on my Series S, but it also dropped on PS5 and PC. I am closing in on about 20 hours played, but I've yet to beat it. From my understanding, and this is just going off vibes and a little bit that I've read about this game, it does feel like it's about 30 hours to maybe 60 hours if you're a completionist. So I would say, based on how I typically play these types of games, I'm probably 2/3 of the way done with this game, kind of making my way through the final stretch. So that being said, as always, when it's the case of a game that I haven't actually beaten, this video is just my first impressions. Clair Obscur Expedition 33 is set in a dark fantasy world where each year a witch goddess called the Paintress causes anyone older than a mysteriously painted number to vanish. The number goes down every year. In response, the island of Lumineer sends expeditions to the mainland to try to stop her, with a 33rd group, hence the name of this game, including engineer Gustave, voiced by Daredevil himself, Charlie Cox. I will touch on the voice performances later, but the cast of this game is outstanding. You have video game veterans like Starr and Jennifer English, but you also have Hollywood stars as well, like the aforementioned Charlie Cox, but also Andy Serkis. I'm a huge Lord of the Rings and Planet of the Apes fan, so I was really excited to see him in this. I was already really excited about Expedition 33 because the premise felt so unique and interesting, and I want to always root for indie studios, especially with their first game, like it is the case with Sandfall. But seeing such a great and diverse cast attached made me believe that it was a project that they genuinely wanted to be a part of. When talented people you like Charlie Cox and Andy Serkis and Jennifer English and Starr are signed on to something, it doesn't always guarantee the final product will be great, but it definitely raises the floor for me. It definitely puts a game or a movie or TV show or whatever on my radar, and it gets me even more excited for it. And I do like to think that I have a pretty good eye for pop culture. I have confidence in my taste. So when something like Clair Obscur catches my attention like it did, it usually means something to me. I'm not batting 1,000 or anything, but not to brag, when a project grabs my attention like this one did, I'm more right than wrong. And I was definitely not wrong with Expedition 33. This game is cool as hell. I've said this before in past videos, but I love when a game has a clear vision and fully commits to it. I might not agree with every creative decision a studio makes, and I definitely have a few nitpicks with Expedition 33, but I will always give a pass to a game that knows exactly what it wants to be and tries to execute that vision. I'm always going to give them the benefit of the doubt. This game is absolutely overflowing with personality. I love the way French culture is embedded in this game. It felt like a breath of fresh air for a turn-based RPG game, which is usually dominated by Japanese influences. And to be honest with you, I'm not a huge fan of turn-based games, which should tell you exactly how good Expedition 33 is, because I was able to overlook my usual hangups with this genre and have a blast with it. It certainly doesn't hurt that they mixed in some action RPG elements that I love from Soulsborne games, along with some quick time events for good measure. All right, so let's get into some specifics. And since I've already kind of mentioned the gameplay a little bit, we'll go ahead and start there. I'll talk about the story, visuals, and everything else later in this review. Like I said, Clair Obscur is basically a turn-based RPG at its core, definitely inspired by stuff like Final Fantasy and Persona. Sandfall has literally said that those games, those franchises, has influenced their game. And I'm sure that I'm probably going to catch some heat for this, but honestly, I don't really love those types of games. I do play them. I've played Marvel's Midnight Suns, the first 2 South Park RPGs, and of course I'm a huge Pokemon fan. So yes, I do play those games, but still, they're not always my favorite. I do appreciate the strategy behind the genre, like when to heal and to attack and all that good stuff. And Expedition 33 absolutely nails that turn-based strategy. Every character has their own sub-mechanic that gives them a unique edge in combat. And like Pokemon, they can learn different moves that inflict status effects. Certain enemies have weaknesses or resistances to those effects, so you kind of have to build your team and your moveset accordingly. That means a lot in this game. If you're fighting a boss that is resistant to a lot of the moves that you have, you're gonna have a bad time. So I do appreciate that there's a lot of that strategy in Expedition 33. You can equip 6 moves per character at a time. You can find new moves by exploring, beating enemies, or unlocking them through skill trees. I do want to mention that the skill trees are the main way that you're going to unlock new moves. You can unlock new moves on the aforementioned skill tree by earning XP after battles, which is of course the typical way that you do that. How well you fight determines how much XP you get. When you level up, you earn points to unlock new moves and upgrade stats like health and agility. So yeah, the strategy runs deep. I am almost 20 hours in and still figuring things out. There's definitely moments in this game while I was playing that the light bulb kind of went off and the game, at least one mechanic of the game, kind of clicks and you can start like setting up these huge combos a few turns ahead. And when that light bulb does go off, it's really, really satisfying. But it also, on the flip side of that, did kind of make me mad at myself for making the early game harder than it needed to be because I didn't kind of put those puzzle pieces together. But there's a lot of mechanics. It does get really dense. And so there's a lot to kind of think about as you're doing this turn-based combat. There's also passive boosts called Pictos that will let you do stuff like you always can attack first, or you can land elemental effects like burn damage or lightning damage more easily. Plus, you'll find better weapons you can upgrade at your camp, which you can set up while traveling across the world map between similar and more linear areas. Side note, this was a small nitpick, especially for anybody out there watching this that also gets lost in video games really easily. There is no map or compass during those linear sections. So there is a big world map that you'll explore occasionally, but typically you're just going from one linear section to another. And during those linear sections, that they do have some branching paths that you can take, some side content that you can take. But for the most part, you are trying to get from point A to point B. And if you, like me, get lost super easy in games, it was pretty frustrating that there was no map or compass that I could find. So I ended up going in circles, which was super, super annoying. Now, as much as I like the dense strategy of turn-based games, the reason I typically don't love these games is because you kind of feel like a spectator during battle. Sure, you have a lot of decisions to make prior to actually attacking, but the actual act of attacking is usually just hitting a button and then you just watch it play out. That's a major reason why I loved, or I guess I should say loving, Clair Obscur as much as I have been. I know the turn-based purists out there are probably going to hate the quick time events and the dodge parry mechanics that Sandfall added, but for me, it has been an awesome experience. Lately, I've been talking a lot about Soulsborne games, and it feels like studios are finally giving that style the respect it deserves, but most studios are kind of just making their carbon copy of a From Software game. Clair Obscur doesn't do that. It doesn't just copy those Souls games, though. It takes those elements, like dodging and parrying, and it weaves it into this turn-based combat. You still get that same trial and error feeling from Soulsborne games. You have to learn enemy and boss movesets over a few tries until you can dodge or parry perfectly and absolutely wreck them. There are even flagpoles, which are basically campfires in Dark Souls or sites of grace from Elden Ring, where you can heal, upgrade, and save. But as in those From Software games, resting at those flagpoles also respawns enemies. So you do have to think strategically about when you can use them. The parrying window is especially tight. You really have to be on your A game to pull off a parry in this game. While dodging is a bit more forgiving, it's also pretty tough as well. And some of these boss battles do get pretty difficult because the game is kind of designed in a way that it expects you to parry bosses. And when you parry them, you get a ton of damage. So a lot of these big boss fights, they're kind of damage sponges. So the game kind of expects you to parry them, and if you can't pull it off, you're going to struggle a lot in this game because you're just going to have to chip away at these bosses, and that's going to take forever. Honestly, I'm really excited to see the hardcore players doing no damage runs of this game, because it is technically possible to do a no damage run. So when people start really getting into this game and getting good at this game, I imagine there's going to be a lot of no damage runs of this game, and those streams or videos are going to be insane, and I cannot wait to watch. Sandfall also added a free aim system, so you can break stuff while exploring to find loot in those linear sections. However, more importantly, you can also aim for enemy weak spots in battle or to break shields. The free aim system doesn't really do a ton of damage if you're just trying to shoot the enemy directly, but if you can hit a weak spot, usually you can do a big chunk of damage right away, or it's useful to break shields. But for the most part, it's not something you're going to use a ton, but is a cool extra layer of strategy during these turn-based battles. Before I move on from gameplay, I do have to mention that there is platforming in this game. It's not used a ton in this game, but I do want to mention, because I am such a big fan of platforming in general, I do have to mention that the platforming in Clair Obscur is pretty rough. Movement feels kind of clunky, especially on small ledges. Thankfully, it's not a platform heavy game, and a lot of the platforming is optional. Like I said, in these like linear sections where you're kind of clearing out these enemies to get to a big boss at the end, there are kind of these branching paths that you can follow, and a lot of the platforming is on these kind of optional branches that you can do. So it's something that you can kind of skip altogether. But as someone who loves platformers, it was a bit disappointing to see how bad platforming was in this game. All that being said, overall, I love the combat system. It's deep, it's satisfying, and even though some hardcore turn-based fans might not love all the new mechanics, I appreciate them a lot. It took a lot of what I love about Soulsborne games and brought it into the turn-based genre, which is not a genre that I particularly love, so it was kind of a breath of fresh air for me. I think the added depth is going to add a lot of replay value, which is always a win in my book. And as much as I love the gameplay, what really separates this game from others is its story. Of course, I'm not going to spoil too much. I honestly can't spoil that much because, like I said, I haven't beaten the game, but I'm going to try to tiptoe around a lot of the big spoilers, which honestly is kind of hard with a game like this because there are some major twists that happen pretty early on. One of them honestly shocked me. I was literally just sitting there thinking, okay, that can't be real. There has to be some kind of twist or something. And so far, it was real. So yeah, I'm gonna try to dance around that stuff, but I do kind of want to talk about the story in general terms. Again, I haven't beaten it, so I haven't gotten the entire story, but the world they've built is just really interesting to me. I love the whole concept of the paintress painting a number and everyone older than that number getting Thanos snapped out of existence. I just think that's a really cool concept. It's cool and creepy at the same time, which is kind of my thing. Plus, there's a lot of mystery baked in, like where did this witch goddess come from? Why is she doing this? Again, I haven't beaten the game yet, so I don't know if those questions get answered eventually, but it's definitely made me excited to keep playing. The characters are also really well developed. A lot of that is thanks to the all-star cast, who absolutely bring them to life. But this game takes its time. It's a slow burn, especially at the beginning. Much of the prologue is just essentially a walking sim. You just kind of walk around, talk to people during this pseudo celebration called the Gommage, which is basically this grim yearly celebration, and I say celebration in quotes, where the paintress picks the new number. Essentially, it's just the next number down, and because she paints the new number, it wipes out the chunk of population that was older than that number. So you can really feel the tension with the people that in this particular case, we start off the game at 34, but we're at the Gommage, which is going to tick it down to 33. So anybody that is 34 is about to get Thanos snapped. So obviously you feel the tension and the despair in those people, but also you feel that in the other people that still remain, because they understand that time is running out. And if these expeditions keep failing, eventually there's only going to be little kids left, and they can't go on these expeditions, and they can't, like, what are they going to do when there's no adults around to take care of them? So it's really heavy stuff. And to add to that, literally you're about to go on an expedition to take down the paintress, and you know that no previous expedition has ever come back. So it makes all of these early conversations, either you're talking to somebody that's about to get snapped out of existence, or you have the added pressure of being one of society's last hopes. So those conversations hit pretty hard at the very beginning of the game, and you get a sense of the tone of the rest of the game. I mentioned camps briefly earlier when I talked about the gameplay, but when you set up your base camp, you also get to have these deep personal conversations at camp, kind of like you would in Baldur's Gate 3 or more recently Avowed. It gives even more weight to the characters and their relationships, and you get to know these characters and kind of bond with them even more than you did in the prologue. All that being said, even though the story is super heavy, obviously, the game also does a great job in sneaking in some humor as well. There's this entire early section where you're trying to find these village of these little people who literally, pun I'm assuming intended, look like tiny paintbrushes, and they essentially act like little kids as far as their intellect is concerned, and so your interactions with them are pretty funny. Also, there's a creature named Eske who helps you traverse the bigger areas in between those linear sections. So the bigger areas on the map, you eventually unlock him as a creature that you can use to traverse the larger world map. And when you first meet him, you have to do this task for him to actually unlock him. And there's this hilarious back and forth between him and his neighbor. And little moments like that really kind of helped balance out the darker tone, which I appreciated a lot. So the cherry on top of everything is this game looks and plays great. The visual fidelity, especially during the cutscenes, is seriously impressive. Even more so when you realize the whole studio is about 30 people. I know they outsource some stuff, especially the music, which we'll get to here in a second, but the fact that for the most part, only 30 people made this game, and it has really impressive gameplay with a lot of depth, and the story is amazing, but also the visuals just look outstanding. The fact that 30 people made this game is really, really impressive. The creature design is awesome too, especially the bosses, even though it is kind of hard to appreciate how cool the bosses look when they're busy absolutely wrecking you. I think overall the art direction is top notch. However, not everything's perfect. If I did have one small complaint, is the colors that they used in the environments do feel a little muted. I get it. They wanted to use kind of darkness to match the tone of the story, but it did kind of make some of the environments kind of feel washed out and samey. That said, there's still a good variety in the places that you explore and the different areas that you get to explore, so it does keep things from getting boring. I just kind of wish that they used some bright colors in certain spots. The classical soundtrack also deserves a shout out. It's honestly some of the best music I've heard in a video game in a very long time. It really gives the game a cool atmosphere. However, the only downside to that is, since you're probably going to have to fight most bosses more than once, again, because they're kind of tough, the parrying window is pretty small. Each boss has its own theme, which is awesome. But on the flip side of that, because you're going to have to fight them more than once, you're going to end up having to hear the same boss theme over and over again, and that can start to get a little annoying. Oh, and just for the record, and I did mention this earlier, I did play this on my Xbox Series S. I'm almost 20 hours in, and I had 0 crashes or clipping issues. It's run smooth as hell for me. I have heard a few people complain about that stuff. I haven't gotten any of that, so I don't know if maybe that was on PC or PlayStation 5 or whatever, but on Xbox, it ran smooth as hell for me. So wrapping up this video, Clair Obscur Expedition 33 totally surprised me, which is surprising in itself because I had high expectations for this game, but even those lofty expectations, it exceeded those. Even though turn-based RPGs usually aren't my thing, I loved how much strategy there was and how they mixed in dodging, parrying, and the boss battles that you would expect in a From Software game. They were actually able to bring that to a turn-based strategy game. The story is super original and heavy, but it still finds some time for levity, which I appreciated. And the characters come to life thanks to great writing and an awesome voice cast. Visually, it's super impressive for such a small team, even though some of the environments and colors were a little muted for my taste. The soundtrack is amazing, even though hearing the same boss theme, like I just said, on repeat does get a little old. Overall, between the deep combat, cool world, and smooth performance, I had a blast and can't wait to see more people dive into this game. I know that so far it sounds like it's doing pretty well. I played this on day one on Game Pass, so outside of the subscription service, I actually didn't have to pay anything to play this game. So obviously, if you have Game Pass as I did, there's no excuse to check out this game. This game is awesome. Even if you don't like turn-based strategy games, you will like this game, most likely, especially if you like Soulsborne games. But apparently it's only $50 on PC and PlayStation 5. So that was super surprising. I did not know that until I was kind of prepping for this video, and it's definitely well worth that price. When other games are charging 60 or 70, or in Nintendo's case, even $80 for games that I don't think are worth that price, $50 for a game like this is an absolute steal. Sure, it could shit the bed in the last third of this game, but I have a sinking suspicion it does not. As always, I'm not going to give it a final star rating. I kind of just like to give you an idea where I'm at though, so I do kind of like to give it a provisional star rating. So out of 5 stars, I'm probably somewhere between 4 and 4.5 stars with Clair Obscur Expedition 33. I have been really enjoying it so far. But as always, those are my thoughts on Expedition 33. Didn't want to say the full title. I'd love to hear yours in the comments down below. Of course, if you enjoyed this video, which you probably did, it'd be weird if you were still watching it and you didn't like it. If you did like it, definitely smash that like button, as the kids say. If you especially liked it and you haven't already, definitely consider subscribing. If you do subscribe, ding that bell. That way you're notified every time I post another video. I try to post weekly gaming related content, so you obviously like that type of content if you've made it this far. So go ahead and subscribe and ding that bell. That way you're notified. All right, so until next video, take it easy. What's up, YouTube people? It's your boy Patty McNinja, and this is my boy Yoshi, aka Kitty Boy, and we were just talking and we agree that since you made it this far in the video, you might as well subscribe. You wouldn't want to disappoint Kitty Boy, would you?